All right, Jabosai, good morning. Let us begin. Chavra on Zoom, you hear me all right? We're good, excellent. All right, Jabosai, so I sent out just a little while ago Os Tes Zayin of Tzidkas Hatzaddik. So today we're going to start, we actually, there was a little bit at the end of Os Tes Vav, but we're actually going to see that the Rebbe is going to cover some of those themes in the next Seif as well, because you could see there's a bit of a continuation of the same motif. So in Seif Tes Zayin, the Rebbe writes as follows. He says, Dvar mitzvah sha'oseh mipnei ha'safek chal alav kidushas Hashem yisbarach bevadai. So when a person does a mitzvah, but a person does the mitzvah out of safek, out of doubt, even though, again, I'm doing the mitzvah out of doubt, nevertheless, chal alav kidushas Hashem yisbarach bevadai. There is a definitive kidusha which devolves upon someone who is doing something out of doubt. We'll see what this means in just a moment. It says, Dugmas, what's the paradigmatic example of this? Yom Tov Sheni. Paradigmatic example of this is Yom Tov Sheni, where I observe Yom Tov Sheni out of doubt, and yet what? And yet, halacha l'maisa, there is still devolving of Kiddusha upon the individual. But we'll say, take a look at the Be'urei HaChasidus for just a moment, paragraph Tes Zayin. Al pi ha'mevuar le'el, shehizdamnus shel mitzvah, hi zechia la'adam v'ha'kadosh baruch hu, mizamin zuchus zuli ohavav. So remember again, in the last Seif, says Rab Tzaddik, we learned that's what? That's when HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows for someone to perform a mitzvah. So l'maisa, again, that is a privilege that the Ribono Shel Olam is giving to this individual. That is a schus that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mazmin. God prepares an incredible opportunity for the individual. So watch this. Here Reb Tzaddik is taking this a step further. He says, Yispaer kan shegam devar mitzvah sha'adam oseu rak mipnei hasafek im chayav lasoso. In this case, if a person does a mitzvah, even just out of safek, I'm not even sure that I'm obligated to do it, but I do it nevertheless. Reb Tzaddik says, Af al pi she'eno mekayim mitzvah bevados b'maisezeh. Even though a person is not performing a definitive act and he's not sure is what he's doing a mitzvah or not, nevertheless, b'cholzos, writes Reb Tzaddik, chal alav ala adam kidushas Hashem yisbarach. See, listen to this fascinating idea. Listen to this incredible idea. Gavi, it's a lot of stuff. Do you need help or anything? You got it. So interestingly enough, so Reb Tzaddik says as follows. He says, you might have thought that a person only acquires Kiddushas HaMitzvah only when it is clear and absolute, unequivocal, that he's doing something that is the Ratzon Hashem. Okay, so Reb Tzaddik says over here, that's not necessarily the case. Even if a person is doing something out of safek, person is doing something because he's not sure. Person is doing something because he has a doubt. Am I obligated and am I not obligated? Well, so we know the concept. The concept is that whenever you have a safek, so halacha l'maisa, you end up doing certain things in order to satisfy doubt. Reb Tzaddik writes, even though I'm doing it to satisfy doubt, still nevertheless, chal alav kidushas Hashem yisbarach. Or it's a little bit differently, even a questionable mitzvah, or that's the wrong word, even a mitzvah performed out of doubt provides absolute holiness. Says Reb Tzaddik, what's the pshat? So he writes, because mitzad kiyum ritzono yisbarach bevadai. Because at the end of the day, even when I perform mitzvah out of doubt, I know that I'm performing the Ratzon Hashem. See, I will say, here's what's incredible. Right, Reb Tzaddik, why is it that when we perform mitzvos, that there's Kiddusha? Why is it that when we perform mitzvos, there's a sense of holiness? It's because at the end of the day, I know that I am performing the will of God. That's what this is. I know that I'm performing the Ratzon Hashem Yisbarach. So it happens, he says Reb Tzaddik, that in cases of doubt, right? So in cases where I don't know, the halacha says you have to do this out of doubt, that's also the Ratzon Hashem. That's also the will of God. So as long as it's the will of God, says Reb Tzaddik, then ultimately again know that Kiddusha, what his lashon is, Kiddushas Hashem Yisbarach. So ultimately, mitzad kiyum ritzono bevadai. You have Kiddusha vados, even from a mitzvah B'safek. And this is incredible. I think what Hatzaddik is trying to highlight to us is that Rabbi says sometimes in the performance of mitzvos, we at times lose the trees from the forest. And we sometimes forget what the entire Ratzon Hashem, or what the entire essence is. The entire essence of a mitzvah, says Rab Tzaddik, as you saw before, is to come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when the Ribbon Shalom provides us with mitzvos, he's providing us with that gift, that his damdos, that zuchus, to come close. And says Rab Tzaddik, even sometimes when we have to do things out of doubt, when I do something out of doubt, I'm doing that because that is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to do. And if it's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to do, then by definition, that mitzvah brings me closer. It's interesting that he brings the example of Yom Tov Sheni, because a lot of times when it comes to Yom Tov, the performance of Yom Tov Sheni, we often ask ourselves, many ask themselves, especially now, and it's a legitimate question, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? We have the calendar, we know how everything is set up. Right? In Eretz Yisrael, of course, they're not doing it, they never did it. So why am I doing this? Okay, so that's obviously a halachic question that has a legitimate and good and bona fide halachic answer. But understand that sometimes we think that, okay, so what's the Kedusha of Yom Tov Sheni? Not all that much. He's using Yom Tov Sheni as an example, but Reb Tzaddik says it's not true. He says at the end of the day, keeping Yom Tov Sheni is what the Ribbon Shalom wants me to do as a result, ultimately, of listening to the words of Chazal. So therefore, by definition, that ultimately yields a sense of his karvos. That will yield a sense of closeness. That will yield a sense of connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So even a mitzvah performed b'safek ultimately yields definitive connection to the Ribbon Shalom. He goes on, he says, V'ayin Shabbos Chav Gimel Amud Aleph, T'mevarchin Asher Kiddushem Sasav V'tzivanu. I'm sorry, Asher Kiddushem B'mitzvosav Asafek. So say this is actually very interesting. He says, for example, that's why we'll see, when we'll discuss this, that even in certain situations when you perform a mitzvah, misafek, you still go ahead and say, Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu. Now, one second, what does that mean? I'll think about this just a moment. Now, again, the simple example of this, of course, is Yom Tov Sheni as well, right? You'll go ahead and you'll make the right. One will make the bracha on Neiros, on candles, on Yom Tov Sheni as well. But one second, how do you say Asher Kiddisham V'Sasav V'Tzivanu L'Hadlik Ner Shal Yom Tov? Right? How do you say that on second day Yom Tov when at the end of the day, A, that's legislated by Chazal, and B, it's legislated out of Safek. So the fact that it's legislated by Chazal, that's not a big deal. I mean, you understand? It's not meaning I can make a bracha because we make a bracha on all rabbinic things, because at the end of the day, Kadosh Baruch Hu vested Chazal with the ability to make takanas and gezerus. But at the end of the day, can I honestly say that the observance of Yom Tov Sheni is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants of me? Is that I'm doing this out of Safek? No, says Rab Tzaddik. Any time you're doing something as a mitzvah, and the mitzvah is being done in an effort to come closer to the Ribbon Shalom, then ultimately that's the Ratzon Hashem. How do you know? That you could even go ahead and make a bracha of Asher Kiddushan V'Sasav V'Tzivanu, even on a mitzvah misafek, which I will say I think yields just an incredible and overwhelming yesod, which is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants out of our mitzvos more than anything, is the ability to come close to Him, is the ability to connect with Him. That is the goal. The goal is connection. And sometimes, Chazal speak about this idea that the greatest danger when it comes to mitzvahs is that it becomes mitzvahs anoshim milumada. That a person just does mitzvahs by rote, and whatever it is, you fill in the blank, davening, whatever, learning, whatever it might be. But lemaisa, the ability to go ahead and utilize a mitzvah, even misafek, as a mechanism to come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is a fulfillment of the Ratzon Habore, gives us the ability to say Asher Kiddushan V'Sasav V'Tzivanu, and even if the mitzvah is b'safek, the creation of relationship and the creation of Kedusha is bivadai. All right, so we'll stop over here for today. We'll continue the rest of Seif Tes Zayin tomorrow.